Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the TRBusiness Adapt and Survive Skype video series. Today we are joined by Simon Black. Simon is the Executive Managing Director Travel Retail of Harper Dennis Hobbs. Hi Simon, how are you?
Hi Andrew, I'm great, thank you.
It's really great to meet you, albeit virtually. I've written about your company several times, but I don't think we've actually met face to face in any capacity. So it's great to finally talk to you. For those who may not know too much about Harper Dennis Hobbs, can you please offer a brief overview with travel retail and duty free in mind?
Sure. Yeah, Harper Dennis Hobbs is a London-based retail consultancy business. We are one of Europe's largest retail consultancy firms based in London, but we have offices in Madrid, in the Netherlands, in the US, and we act globally, providing strategic retail advice and property advice for a fantastic range of clients. We're really proud to work with over 200 retailers, from some of the biggest names in the fashion industry, some of the biggest luxury brands in the world. We have some great F&B clients, and as well as leisure. So we're extremely proud. And within our business, we have multiple business divisions, providing multiple different services to retailers. One of them, which is travel retail, which we're obviously talking about today, which is an integral part of Harper Dennis Hobbs. And within the travel retail division, we provide, again, strategic advice to retailers on their travel retail portfolios and their propositions. And we also provide, strategic advice to airports, train stations, operators on their commercial offers.
As I say, I can imagine you probably had some tough conversations with clients trying to plan ahead for the future over the last couple of months. But just focusing on the impact of COVID-19, can you just offer an insight into how it's impacted you personally and professionally?
Yeah, personally, I think for everyone, it's been an immensely challenging period. And I think pretty much everyone who listens to this will probably concur with this. And it's probably been one of the, both professionally and some of the hardest times that I've ever been through in my career, in my life. Professionally, it's been huge. The business, like every business out there, is suffering. Is suffering badly. We having to adapt to a completely new, different way of working. But that said, we've never been busy. I think the team has been fantastic. Everyone we've worked harder than we ever have done. We're putting in crazy hours for all of our retail clients at the moment. Business has never been busier in that regards, just adapting to a new way of working. Personally, it's been fantastic in some ways. It's given me, I think, certainly a greater appreciation for the basic things we have in life. Maybe shopping for new T-shirts, put that into context, and it wasn't really as important as it was before. And I think working at home has been great, and spending more time with the kids and the family has absolutely been fantastic. And getting to grips with homeschooling, I now have a greater appreciation for teachers now, and I've been homeschooling my eldest kid while trying to do a full-time job, and balancing that has been incredibly hard, but also incredibly rewarding in some extent as well. And juggling video calls with my 8-year-old running around the house has also been fun, shall we say. I think my eldest has shown his school art project to pretty much the entire board of Tiffany very recently, which they were all pleased to see, which is quite amusing. And absolutely, personally, I think what I really miss is the contact with the day-to-day people in the industry, and that is something whilst we're all getting grips to working with Zoom, Teams, Skype, and this has been great, but it's no substitute for that face-to-face contact and human relationship that we have.
Can you just elaborate a little bit more? You touched on some of the things there, like the use of Zoom and Skype. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how the company has functioned during the crisis and the crisis? Has it taken some people longer to get used to than others? Do you have regular group calls, etc.? And what about with your travel retail clients? Is it more phone, Zoom, Teams? I personally I'm learning all these new platforms which I never even heard of. I'd heard of Zoom, but Teams it's all new to me. So just if you can elaborate a tiny bit more, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, our company is based in we're very lucky to have some amazing located offices on Regent Street in London, and our company policy has been, and it still is at the moment, whilst the office is now reopened, the policy is very much work from home, and everyone's had to adapt to working differently. And I think people work very differently at home. Some people are extremely self-motivating, so hasn't really been too much of a change. Some people find it difficult working from home, and I had to make sure we can provide everyone with the tools to do so. I think actually now, Zoom, Teams, Skype have provided a fantastic way of us, reaching out and connecting like we are and talking to each other as if we were physically there. And I think, like most probably people listen to this, I'm spending my life on these Teams calls. By the evening, I just want to break from the laptop. I just want to sit down and read a book and just chill out and do something different.
Yeah, and actually, just moving more onto the business element. As retail outlets start to reopen in travel retail and indeed domestic markets, how, in your opinion, are shoppers behaving differently, and how are the retailers having to adapt?
Yeah, we're getting some great insight from all the retail brands that we work with across Europe, where Europe has been ahead of the UK in terms of reopening its domestic market retail. It's now been open for sort of 8 to 10 weeks, depending on the country. And there's some real great insight that we're seeing in terms of how consumers are behaving now in this, post kind of Corona world. And what absolutely is pretty consistent amongst all the retail that's reopened, and we've even seen that now in the UK in the last couple of weeks, is that footfall is undoubtedly significantly down on last year. The social distance measures that the different governments across the world are having to put in place in terms of how retailers trade is absolutely having an impact on their operations. It's restricting the number of people into their stores at any one point in time, and depending on the type of retailer, it's restricting their operations. And what this is really, I think, quite fascinating. It's showing is that those consumers that are shopping are absolutely wanting to buy something. So what it's done is it's kind of weeded out the browsers, as it were. People just going into shops and just having a browse. Those people aren't there. What retailers are consistently seeing across Europe and also in the UK now in the last couple of weeks is that conversion is gone through the roof. Conversion is extremely high. The only reason people are not really buying now is if you don't have that item in your size or you're out of stock on that particular product. That's really the only reason why consumers are not buying. Consumers nowadays, are not really going to be queuing up for stores unless they really have to buy something. Spend per consumer, again, is double, if not triple, what it has been in their businesses. But ultimately, because footfall is down and because of the social restriction measures, sales are not reaching the same levels as last year. And it depends on the type of retailer, but consistently retailers are somewhere between sort of 40 and 50% down on last year. But what's interesting is they're all reporting that their online business is still strong. So the online, when retailers reopen, because online hasn't dipped, it's stayed quite strong, and they're getting, but they are getting smaller and fewer customers in their store shopping.
Yeah, some fascinating insights there. Just like maybe cobbling all of that together, how would you assess the airport retail landscape versus the high street retail landscape, and why? I've spoken to some retailers in like China, for example. And in China, there's a big focus on the domestic recovery, and they're doing their utmost to drive domestic consumption within the country. So, how do you see the split there?
So what's been fascinating, as I kind of shared, over the last, as retail's reopened up around the world, what it's definitely proven in the domestic markets is that there was an initial demand, an initial spike in sales and interest in physically shopping again. And I think that's probably born out of a pent up, frustration, and not being able to physically shop over the last 3 or 4 months while we've been in lockdown. And it's been pretty consistent around the world where you look at where domestic markets have reopened their retail. There is an absolutely initial curve, an initial spike in interest where footfall, is relatively strong. Sales have been okay because of the reasons I talked about. Conversion, spend per customer has been fantastic. Then that absolutely very quickly plateaus away after 1 or 2 weeks. That it absolutely dies off, and I think that's been seen because there's definitely still a consumer fear. the global economy is going through will go through one of its toughest recessions that we've ever faced. So people are nervous about spending, especially on discretionary items, and luxuries. So that demand definitely tails off. And if you take the UK, for example, we've now been open sort of 2.5 weeks in terms of the retail. The first week, again, retailers saw a huge spike, huge interest, massive queuing for stores. The second week, last week just gone, if you look at the 420 best kind of retail shopping locations across the UK, they were 57% down on footfall compared to the previous week. So you can really see that after just that initial week, the demand has dropped off. Now, airports are not probably going to experience this spike or drop off because they don't have a domestic customer in that regard. They have a passenger flying through that's only going to really see those stores unless you're a regular flyer, kind of once, maybe twice or 3 times that in the year. So they're probably not going to see that initial tail off, and hopefully the business will build more linear with the passenger kind of growth as the industry gets going again. And I think in terms of the domestic markets, retailers have now got this really tricky balance, because also what is fascinating is retailers are having to consider all kinds of logistical issues that they've never previously considered before. So take warehousing space. Some of the big multiple global brands especially some of the fast fashion or volume categories, their warehousing facilities, they were used to operating those at 100%. They're having to operate these, at 25% because they're having to put social distancing measures in, which means, you can only get 25-30% of their workforce in. So they're having to prioritize, so the supply chain element in these retail brands is fascinating. They're having to, be quite selective about which stores gets the stock deliveries and which gets prioritized. And it's going to be interesting to see how airports fall into that kind of logistics piece in terms of how our stores prioritize compared to the domestic markets.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot about airports there, but what approach will brands have to duty-free and travel retail once the pandemic passes, and why?
And what we're seeing initially, I think there is a nervousness about travel. And I think airports are going to find it's certainly difficult to attract new brands for their physical standalone stores over the next 12 to 18 months. And absolutely for airports, it should be working with your current partners and finding the best kind of most pragmatic, and solution that works with both parties to see yourself through these tough times. I think airports, and we were seeing this in the domestic market before Corona hit, sadly, the high street retail, the domestic markets were suffering, around the world. Retail has been struggling. There's been a huge shift change in retail. That whole online versus the physical retail estate piece has been changing how retail is perceived. And physical retailing in the domestic markets has been getting cheaper in terms of rents for brands, and this before Corona. And what we're seeing as a business is really accelerated now post-Corona world. Landlords on the domestic markets now are very quickly realizing that there's going to be fewer retailers coming out the back of this crisis than there was going in, sadly. And they are lowering their expectations. I think what airports need to be mindful of is that over the coming 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, is that if we still want to command the kind of same levels of concession fees and guaranteed minimum expectations that we did previously, we're going to look increasingly more expensive as a channel to retailers to operate in than we did before, because the domestic markets are now offering huge incentives, rent-free periods, they're building stores for retailers free of charge. Airports will struggle to compete. So that's something we need to be very mindful of in our industry in that regard, attracting brands in. What I would say is there is, it has varied by our client base. I think we've some of our clients, it's very much a fight for survival, and we are absolutely helping them, to survive and come out of this. Some brands, are absolutely, 100% committed to travel retail and will be there in the long term, and that's really great to hear. I think what brands, there is going to be a greater appetite, I think, for travel retail in a more of a risk-free way. So I think what we're seeing already, and it's only early days, is quite a few brands that were previously closed to some channels of travel retail. Let's give you an example. Let's talk about, some brands that maybe previously wouldn't want their brand in a multi-brand environment operated by one of the big, duty-free operators, are now changing their opinions on that. And I think, because that is a more of a lower risk way, they can take a shop in shop, or they can have their brands distributed by these operators in the travel retail channel. And I think that will change. I think more brands will be open to multiple approaches to travel retail. And I think that's great for the big operators around there. I think they can attract some great new exciting brands that they've maybe previously not been able to work with. And I think that's really exciting because it is more of a risk-free way for brands to enter the channel.
And speaking of new approaches, much has been made of the so-called digital revolution post-COVID-19 in the duty-free and travel retail. How big a role do you see digital playing moving forward in the channel, and why? I know that's probably a question which could take up the whole interview, but just in summary would be good.
Yeah, this is a great question because this is something that we debate in the team at Harper Dennis Hobbs within the travel team here, and to quite some extent. I think you absolutely. I think what we all categorically agree on is you absolutely cannot ignore the digital revolution. Digital. However, what we would say in travel retail is digital is never going to replace the physical experience. Travel retail, you physically have to be there because, flying is the primary objective. And whereas, on the domestic market, you don't necessarily need to be there to engage in retail, but travel retail, absolutely. So will there be 100% online channels in travel retail? I think that's unlikely to happen. But what I think what airports have got to do is absolutely be enhancing their physical retail experience that they have with digital solutions. And this is through pre-flight engagement. A lot of airports now are developing, absolutely, and I think all airports should be doing this, but developing kind of reserve and collect platforms, or shop online, collect in the airport, these kind of models. And this is absolutely something all airports should be doing. And I think it will absolutely help give, certainly during the kind of next coming years, it will help provide some security in your experience as a passenger in the airport. There was a lot of fear surrounding travel at the moment. Getting on board, going through airports, getting on board a plane, and I think the more we can do to take that fear out of shopping in an airport, the better it will be, the more successful it will be. And I think digital will play a critical role in that. There's a lot of talk about the augmented reality at the moment and providing solutions to for beauty brands in terms of testing. Or trying on a pair of sunglasses, virtually without having to physically touch them. There, augmented reality can provide some great service enhancements to the physical retail experience. I think this is absolutely where airports cannot ignore this, nor can some of the retailers and operators. And I think this is where the efforts need to be focused.
As I say, only time will tell, and it'll be very interesting to see how the coming months and years transpire. Thanks ever so much, Simon, for taking the time to talk to me today. It was some fascinating insights there, and I look forward to meeting in person when this horrific pandemic is all over with.
Absolutely, we'll enjoy a beer.
Look forward to it. Thank you.